Okay, so let's talk about Gart. Gart is one of the first characters you run into in Disco Elysium, a game which, if you haven't heard of it or tried it, I honestly urge you to. I hate using qualifiers to games like the best or better or in my top 10, so please, when I tell you that this may be the best game I've ever played, please don't take that as glib, especially since my first introduction into it was so rough for reasons we'll get into. Gart, okay, so you start Disco Elysium as a man who has no memory of anything, his name, what he's doing here, just a man, waking up in a room in a hotel called the Whirling in Rags, in pain. The place is trashed, he's in his underwear. He has, by the look of it in the mirror, a horrific expression, kind of cocky, over-the-top grin, trying to pass off as some cool guy, even though he's clearly hiding some kind of pain. You go outside to talk to a woman there named Clausier, however that goes for you, and go down to run into Kim Kitsuragi, who is the best. I have a dear friend who made an excellent video on him, please watch it. And likely, you'll end up talking to Gart, who runs the inn. He does not like you. He pushes you to pay him for the damage you did to his establishment, though you can't remember it, and he's asking for 100 real, which is not our currency, but it is a significant amount of money, and no matter what you say or do to try to talk your way out of it, he refuses to let up. You have wronged this man in a way that you, the player, have no agency over. The main character has opened this game causing harm to the people in Martinez, where the game takes place, and the game has asked you not to judge him, though you absolutely can, nor to fix it, though you can do your best, but to be with it, to live with his actions. Agency. What a concept. But that isn't it, is it? The deceptive thread of Disco Elysium is that it starts, well, when it starts with a meaningful visual component that isn't text boxes, right? Like the premise, shall we say, is prima facie hilarious. A wacky joke, right? What if you start the game waking up from an epic bender and you've forgotten everything about yourself entirely, why you're here, what you're doing, where your shoes are? How does a game that sounds like a wacky exercise in pretending to be a drunk man who's supposed to be a detective reach this point with this person making this video with this title? The first real hurdle in talking about Disco Elysium is scope. The game is open-ended in a way that is really hard to talk about. A lot of games are open-ended in that they feature a huge, sprawling map, tons of side quests, non-linear progression, but Disco Elysium is open-ended in depth. It's very easy to spend a lot of time talking about Kuno, or Kim Kitsuragi, or how it implements money in a way that really distinctly divides the wealthy and the impoverished, or how many details underpin the simple main objective to solve the murder you were assigned to solve a week ago. You can make an essay on how your tasks range from finding the killer to finding your missing shoe, from forcing Titus Hardy, the man who's stonewalling your progression through the case, to respect you, to finding some cigarettes to smoke. The game is honestly staggering, overwhelming to try to approach broadly, so what are our options? Themes? What is Disco Elysium about, definitively? It's not about politics, though it wears its political ideas bravely on its sleeve. It's not about hope, though it is intensely hopeful in a lot of ways. It's not about love, though it can be extremely loving. Maybe it's about pain? About losing things, being responsible for your losses, and at the same time unable to prevent them. You know, it is a game that made me hate a union boss and love an ultra-liberal. A game that made me potentially ruin an already ruined woman's life even more because I was on a very petty level furious with the Hardy Boys and couldn't put that aside to recognize that they could have actually helped her. A game where Kuno, this kid, you find throwing rocks at the hanging body, hopped up on amphetamines, spends the entire game calling you homophobic slurs and mocking you for being a cop, only to finally run into his essentially walking corpse of a father, making you confront that you've been fighting with a child in a crisis, being beaten, bullied, neglected. This game has a quest that starts seemingly at random, where you, in what's likely an attempt to find out some information about something about the world, or maybe to flex your potential detective muscles, bully a bookstore customer into revealing that her husband may have been gone a couple days and she's not sure where he is, to finding his dead body, a tragic victim of miserable happenstance, to being the one to tell her to her face that the man she was complaining to you about a few days ago will never come home again. The opening of Disco Elysium, the actual one, the fight you have with your ancient reptilian brain and your limbic system, speaks poetically about the human condition, a bunch of apes duking it out on a big ball. And what read at the time as poetic flavor to set the tone of the story starts to feel more true the longer you live in Martinez. This game is very conscious of power, the power the player has, and you can do incredible things as Tequila Sunset, or Harrier Dubois, or whoever you think you are, but those heights are strictly qualified. You are not a heroic protagonist in the sense that you have the capacity to write the world. The world has ended before you loaded the game. History is over. You are duking it out with the other apes over whatever's left. You can't save this man from his fatal accident. You can't fix Kuno's family. You cannot mend the pain you have inflicted, save your car, or notably, well... In my playthrough of Disco Elysium, of which I'm using the footage from, I got obsessed with what's happening in this church. See, mechanically, Disco Elysium can be infectious. You're playing a very old-school TTRPG with yourself, the DM, and 20 characters that live in your head, who are also your stats. The more you put into them, the more they appear in the story, jetting into your dialogues, giving you insights, observations from as trivial, quote-unquote, as Shiver is telling you stories about Martinez, to as meaningful as Volition pointing out that someone is lying to you and you're falling for it. They do more than that. Our main character, our hero, is at war with himself. Every aspect of his identity sort of up for debate. Are you a communist now? Fascist? Are you keeping your head down and just trying to do your job? Do you hunt cryptids because you want to believe they exist? Or, like my excuse with the club kids, are you doing it to get these two back to their homes? The game wants you to ask more than just doing things, completing tasks, solving mysteries and conversation puzzles. It asks you why you do the things you do. And we'll come back to that, because I need to tell you first about one of my experiences with the game, and this church right here. See, the game bars progression through various dice checks. White ones, they lock temporarily until you gain a particular stat, or maybe some new info to adjust that check again, and red checks you can only do once. By then, I had the idea that it's usually a good idea to, when seeing a red check, back out of the conversation, equip whatever I can in my inventory to boost that stat, and go back in to try it with the best possible chance of success. However, going into this church, I found an odd feeling in one part of it, where it felt like all the noise was getting sucked out of the air, and a red check came in, this feeling that something was up there watching me, and I tried to back out, and the game stopped me. And that's when I found someone, Tiago, a man who was losing himself to this strange anomaly, getting closer, and closer to it, until it in turn got into him, pulling away his usual concerns, his history, his past, his obsessions, harms, a man willing to obliviate himself in serene silence. This, of course, leads to a journey where you run into an aggrieved game developer trying to figure out how she lost all of her data, getting some help from the anodal music kids that are definitely aren't also on speed probably, and a bunch of frustrated attempts at rolling and failing this fucking check. I spent all this time and effort determined to solve this puzzle, And what came from it was, at the time, I didn't know everything, so I needed to get another reality lowdown from my favorite monster, Joyce. This is Joyce. And she tells me about the Pale. Now, the Pale is a term that folks have been maybe saying at me, and it's the kind of expressive talk you expect from Disco Elysium, probably thinking of kind of like a conversational metaphor. But the Pale is very real, a kind of obscure meta matter-like thing. We are, in fact, not evil apes duking it out on a big ball. We are fighting on little strips of land on that ball, cut up into pieces by this surreal force. We can travel through it, but it is damaging in ways that are not exactly physical. Its main properties are that it suspends properties. The deeper you travel into it, the less of the physical world makes sense, up to and including numbers. And it is something you can, allegedly, travel through in a method that resembles writing poetry. And this silence in the church is Pale, in its smallest form. The other clearly known thing about the Pale is that it is expanding at an unknown rate. And this quest, this strange quirk, these strange kids, this stressed woman, this quiet rafter man, we all bear witness to a grim discovery. This will be Pale. It doesn't expand necessarily from its own mass. It can come from anywhere. Martinez will die. It is inevitable. And according to an incredible source, humans may be the cause of it. A raw voice of nature tells us that we may very well doom us all. And then I had to go back to my job. I cannot overstate the scale of this game, for as huge as it is, its eye on the decline of our natural world, on political strife, on unwinding a murder that leads to a violent confrontation, where in my playthrough, I failed every check during and had to watch the Hardy Boys and their voyeur get decimated after their mysterious 8th person killed herself, because I failed that too, one by one, watching Harrier take 2 shots to be held by Kim during what I was worried may be my final moments of this game. I had the option to ask Kim if I have a vast soul. And you do. And Harrier definitely does too. A soul full of quirks and possibilities, imperfect, compromised, hurt, and beautiful. And this game encourages you to get to know this, to understand yourself in conjunction with your duties, with the many people of Martinez, with Kuno, who, despite everything, can very well be your partner at the end of the case. The game can go inward as much as it too expands at an unknown rate, and it is this attention that made this game so hard for me to engage with at first, because it places you into Harrier so effortlessly, so easily, that I, an intensely dysphoric, non-binary cat girl, found it really off-putting, like being seen by a million faceless people as this man that I couldn't not be, a man who, yes, made some horrible decisions the week before I took over for him, but who has arguably made decades of them. He has lived his life, worked it into the grooves of his skin, so that by the time I got to declare myself Raphael Ambrosius Cousteau, he could never not be a part of me in this game. And it was this care that pulled me back in. This love that the game gets to put into you, through him, about him, in relation to him. Those eyes can stare and judge, but also love and see you. Kim says yes. Of course you have a vast soul. So, what is this game about? I don't want to sound sentimental here, but I think it might be about us. People, we who are statues and parodies of ourselves at once. It's a game about being able to know nothing about the world and tell a racist to fuck off within minutes of playing because they lashed out at the one person who seems to just trust you right away. It's a game about a man who gets to fall in love with a city he just met for the first time again, trying to find a relic of a man who has lived here for decades in grotesque alienation. It was, for me, a game about knowing that Clausia lied to me and letting her go anyway because I couldn't let her feel pain like she did and then lock her away. It was, for me, the game where I cried trying to be strong for a newly made widow, where Gart, the man who'd been a total dick to me all game, got a gift from me. I had broken his taxidermy bird before the start of the game, so I guess Harrier did, and I found a new one. And by complete rote, because this game suggested he may like it, I gave it to him. And for a moment, the artifice came out. I got to see Gart, the man who didn't want to be mean to you, who is proud of his work, who wants this place to be bigger, better than it is, who could, for that moment, and in the aftermath of the tribunal, show you that he knows you're trying to be a better person. Do I have a vast soul? I had this floating about in my head that night. I'm struggling with the paper I don't want to write because I came to terms with how upset I was at myself for not finishing out this law degree. I'm struggling with a cover letter for a job, something that I really, really need because, my heart, the siren song in my bones, ringing incessantly through everything I do. Every song I write, game I play, story I sink into, asks me, what does this say? What does this piece of art mean? Someone, people, many people have put work and care and love into something I'm now looking at. What did they see in this? What are they hoping people will see reflected back? None of that pays the bills. All of this is my passion. My heart is not in the video essaying, musician, game designer, streamer, game to think about advertising, analytics, promotions, networking, but expression. To reach through the pale to another Isolari body and hope that someone sees something reflected back. Does that matter in the morning? Do my feelings right now of joy and heartache, of panicked depression, of guilt and worry, are my efforts to make use of my insomniac tendencies, to say something meaningful, to feel meaningfully? Did I get to be lucky enough to be born into a world where my potentially vast soul gets to matter? Did Harry? In that same church, the one that foretells us of the coming Oblivion, you can dance. You can dance real hard. You can get Kim to dance too. You can dance so hard, you black out. And when that happens, what is this strange feeling I keep having? This cold, even now.
I am Le Revacholier. I am the city.
What do you mean, you're the city?
I am a fragment of the world spirit, the genius loci of Revachol. My heart is the wind corridor. The bottom of my air is red. I have 100,000 luminous arms. Come morning, I carry industrial dust and let it settle on tree leaves. I shake the dust from those leaves and onto your coat. I've seen you. I've seen you. I've seen you with her. I've seen you without her. I've seen you on the crescent of the hill.
How are you talking to me?
The modulations of my voice are noted down with thermometers and barometers. You feel me in your nostrils, and the little hairs on the back of your neck. I also reside in your lungs and vestigial organs. Everywhere there is space.
What are you afraid of?
Death. It is terrifying. I need you to protect me from death. I cannot perish. Look at me. I cannot end. In 22 years, the first shot will be fired. Not a shot from a gun, an atomic device that will level all of me. All of me.
But what can I do about it?
You are an officer of the Citizens Militia. You move through my streets freely in motor carriages and on foot. You have access to the hidden places. You also circulate among those who are hidden. I need you. You can keep me on this earth. Be vigilant. I love you.
Oblivion awaits us. This isn't as doomsaying as it sounds. Be it something as sweeping as violence, revolution, extremism, climate change, entropy, the collapse of our sun, or something as intimate and painful as disease, infection, breaking through a rotting piece of boardwalk, alcohol and drug abuse, old age. We are designed to one day die. And Martinez, Revachol, the Isolaries, Disco Elysium is the same. But it and I don't want to sink into that. To collapse into the knowledge that in the grand scope of time, we are fleeting little glimpses, because these fleeting glimpses are beautiful. They are navigating the endless pale expanse of time and space with innovation, with passion, with poetry, novelty dice, words on fire. Yes, the world is ending. Yes, Martinez will die. But the world has not ended yet. You cannot single-handedly end climate change, end capitalism, undo the damage done by the Pale, and Harrier cannot end nuclear war before it begins, but maybe he can help. Maybe do something. You can't unbreak what you have broken, but you can find boundless beauty in the tiny things in your life. In a nice car, in an expression of kindness, in pain, aches that live in your past and present forever. I don't know ultimately what Disco Elysium is about definitively. It's a game that resists essentializing, which means that reading this game, playing and saying it's about hope or victory, love or pain, people, the fleeting beauty of life, while the game may not be about these things in some concrete measure, it is a game that encourages you to find yourself in it, to find what is meaningful to you and hold on to it, because the world has not ended yet.
I would often go there, to the tiny church there, the smallest church in Sansan, though it once was larger. How the realm may rest there, down through the mist there, toward the Seven Sisters, toward those pale cliffs there. I would often stay there, in the tiny yard there. I've been so glad here, looking forward to the past here, but now you are all alone. None of this matters now. None of this matters.